Thank you all for celebrating my 100th podcast episode. This one we're doing a video as well as audio so you can watch us speak. And I'm honored for my 100th episode to be joined by Jon Brooks from HighExistence.com, a massively popular blog that you guys need to go check out. And Jon's going to talk to us a bit about his journey in self-development, his journey in becoming a father, his previous history with social anxiety and confidence issues, and how he used deep persistence and curiosity to create a very meaningful, purposeful, and passionate life that all of you can learn from, myself included. So without further ado, here's Jon. How you been, bro?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's been a chaotic couple of months because I've got a baby. He's almost 6 months old, and his mother has been she's okay now, but she had some like health issues, so it's like the life situation has been a bit chaotic, but I've been coping really well, just focusing everything down to the priorities, the things I like must do every day, and letting go of everything else, that kind of approach, day by day approach.
My town that I live in is like a nursery. Like everyone just has kids all the time. There's new kids, and yeah, the people who survive are the ones who cut down to like the most necessary tasks and like nothing else.
Yeah,
The ones who try to do everything just fall to pieces. From my observations, anyway.
the essentialism.
Mm.
Yeah, just getting really focused on the most essential things.
Tough to do, bro. Very tough.
Yeah, it is. I think that is actually one of there's a philosopher called Rochefoucauld, and he
Mhm.
said he's a French philosopher. He wrote a book of a short book of maxims a couple of hundred years ago, and he said something like true intelligence or wisdom is knowing the real value of things. And I think that's pretty wise, because like you can have a high IQ, but if you're focusing all of that intelligence on the wrong stuff, then you're not being wise at all, right? And so knowing what to value and what not to value.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things people would hear and they'll think, yeah, I'm doing that, and they're really not doing that. The easiest way. So funny you bring up philosophy. Like I'm part of some stoicism groups on the
Yeah.
internet. The amount of effort some people put into like shit posting and commenting and whinging, and I'm like, you're on a philosophy page wasting your time. Like that seems like some sort of paradox to me.
It is, yeah.
Now I notice I'm like wasting my time reading it. I'm like, oh my god, I'm really sucked into this universe. I mean, if you just stack up the minutes of pointless shit that people do each day, it's hours a week, it's days, it's months, and then they're like, oh, I don't have enough time to do shit. It's like, it's true because you choose to expend it on very unimportant stuff.
One of the things that I've just started doing is I find that sometimes when it gets late and I start feeling tired and there are some things I need to do on my to-do list, I can quite easily go, you know what, I'm pretty tired. I'll just do it tomorrow. I'll wake up early. I won't, but I'll wake up early. I'll wake up 5 a.m., I'll wake up 6 a.m. and do it. And then, but at the same time, if someone said, oh, I know you're tired, but the new episode of Game of Thrones is out. Do you want to go in bed and watch it? It's like an hour and a half long. I'd be like, yeah, I could probably manage that. Right. It's like that weird thing. So I started to think of, the tasks that I need to do but don't necessarily want to do. I'm trying to at the moment reframe them as like episodes of Game of Thrones. Like as a question I ask myself, actually, like if I'm tired, I'm like, are you actually tired? Like, or could you watch an episode of your favorite TV show or play a video game for an hour? And if the answer is yes, then try and cultivate that kind of motivation for the task at hand. So it's like a little reframe that I'm using. I find it quite useful.
Yeah, I like that, man. That's really good. Like the I'm tired story.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'm reading right before bed and I can't keep my eyes open. Like that's tired. But like when I usually start saying I'm tired, I've got a long way to go before that moment.
Yeah.
But it's a convincing enough story to be like, all right, no more of the important stuff, no more challenge. And sometimes it's probably accurate, but I think yeah, it'll be interesting to. I'll be keeping in touch with you as fatherhood continues because that's in my near future, I'm sure. And
Mm,
I've got some theories. Like there's a lot of people tell me like, oh, you'll never be able to manage it. Everyone says that they'll keep taking care of themselves and stuff, and they never can. All
mm,
the people who are saying that to me, I don't rely on as like good role models for like self management.
yeah.
Keen to see people like yourself see how you handle it, especially once the kid gets active and mm,
Well,
interesting.
well, they say like one of the hard. I mean, like parents will say like all ages have their own difficulties for a child, but the first 6 months is particularly difficult because the child is completely dependent on you in every way, can't really move, can't support their own head weight. The cot death, like sudden infant death syndrome is the highest in the first 6 months. So it's like it's quite a dangerous, difficult time. They can't really communicate with you. Um, they don't really smile for a few months, so it's a tricky time. But for me, the way I've approached it is I want to be the best father I can be, and I know that in order for me to be the best father I can be, I need to not only just taking care of my child is not enough. I need to set an example.
Mm.
That's the other side. And how do I set an example? Eat well, you know, wake up on time, do my work, um, have boundaries, stay active, stay fit. Um, just so taking care of myself. So actually having a baby has actually motivated me to take care of myself more than before the baby, because I don't want to be a dad who's, you know, who's really good at like feeding and taking care of my son, but has gone morbidly obese, lazy, fallen behind at work, because that's not actually a good dad, right? Like that's not
Mm.
showing your child like how you should act in the world. So that's my approach.
I did a post on Facebook, and this is one of the rare times where I'll give an opinion or advice without my own experience, without at least some anecdotal evidence. And this, I see it exactly what you just said, which is, really taking care of your child means role modeling. Show them how to live. Don't just do it for them. And right
Mm.
from the beginning, take care of yourself, and they'll model that. If you don't take care of yourself, it doesn't matter what you teach them; they're going to model you. I always remember my parents saying, "Don't smoke," but they smoked. What happened? I ended up smoking.
Mm.
Like their words meant nothing. I was watching their behavior, and you're one of the few people who have like echoed my statement. But I've always, when I put this up, I'm like, can I really say this? Because I'm not a parent. I don't know the real life in the moment. I'm just sure I would be like that. Um, so I'm gonna be staying in touch with you around that for sure. Because a guy like yourself in our line of work, I think you're the first one I'm close to yeah, to be dealing with the newborn and trying to actually maintain all the stuff we live by.
Yeah.
Like you've got this little creature that needs you all the time. I'm looking forward to having that example. I'm like, see, it can be done, motherfuckers. Like it can be done.
The other thing, having a child that's been really useful actually is, people say I don't have enough time to do stuff. That's like a classic complaint. I don't have enough time to do this, kind of like to go to the gym, to meditate, to do this project, to write this book. Well, you when you have a baby, you know what it's like to not have enough time, like for real. Like it's
Mm,
really, you don't have enough time to do a lot of things. So that when you do have like a few hours spare, you're like hyper efficient and you focus on the things that matter. So since having my baby, I very rarely like, watch Netflix or waste time. Like when I have some time to myself, I'm thinking, what project can I work on?
mm,
Like I want to get stuff done. I'm like really like, I appreciate the time that I've got to myself, but I want to spend it being productive, doing the things I want to do. Um, like if my parents can help out, they'll say like, can you help out? I want to go to the gym. Like that's kind of my approach. Not, can you help out so I can just binge watch TV? Because I mean, if you're really tired and you want to reward yourself for hard work, fine. I'm not against that, but you do find that you become actually hyper efficient with the time you have, and maybe your net productivity will go higher even though you have less time to work. So yeah, I'm excited for you. I'll definitely keep up to date with you on how things go.
Excellent. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I noticed this even at when I was a manager. All these people I managed, I've been like handed this team, and they're all doing way too many hours. They're paid for 8 hours a day, and they were doing like 12.
Mm.
And I said, I'm going to cut off your computer access after 8 hours. And all of a sudden, they can get all their work done in 8 hours. It made them more productive, not the same, but more.
Yeah,
I was like, holy shit, you guys were just throwing away like days per week, just thrown away. I love that you're kind of forced to be super efficient, and then you realize, actually, I probably could have always done this, but now you've got that extrinsic motivator as well, which is excellent. But let's sort of restart. If anybody's listening who doesn't actually know you, let's do the classic intro and let us know a bit about. Let's start with where you're at now. Who you are, what are you doing now, and then we'll have a look at your backstory a bit more.
So right now I'm 29 years old, and I am the creative director of HighExistence.com. So for those listening, HighExistence is many things. It's on one level, it's a website, it's a blog where we share articles and videos and podcasts on philosophy, spirituality, self-improvement, global issues, and health. But High Existence has been primarily about the community, like that has been a community first kind of site. It's not, we don't just put out articles. We have a very active community of people, and one of our taglines is challenging the way you live. So we like to think of ourselves as a self-improvement website with an alternative spin. So we like to go back to ancient philosophers, Stoicism, which you mentioned, Eastern philosophy, but we also love science, and we're trying to like show people that here's how you can flourish. But the way I've explained it to people in the past is a lot of self-improvement teaches you how to be positive. I know I'm kind of stereotyping, but like a certain large niche of self-improvement says this is how you become more positive. At High Existence, we have some elements of that, but also we want to teach people how you can suffer successfully. Like how you can embrace uncertainty and chaos and disappointment and breakups and loneliness, and how we're all in this together. So it's much more of like a heart-centered community that we have. I run the podcast for High Existence. We've also just started doing retreats where we work with plant medicine. We've done 3 retreats so far, 2 in Costa Rica, 1 in the Netherlands, and we have another one coming up in about a month. So that would be the 4th one. And what I do at High Existence is I write. That's how I got into High Existence. I write, but one of my biggest contributions is that I have a love for creating tools, courses, and products that can sort of like gamify spirituality and self-improvement and make it easy for people to become better versions of themselves. So that's what I focus on at the moment.
And I think that kind of focus is why you and I initially connected so easily and so well. That's of everything you said, that's what stands out to me the most, like how to suffer well.
Mm.
You and I have both spoken about before about sort of the nice guy histories that we have both indulged in, and nice guy syndrome is all about trying to get away from suffering, and all that does is cause endless suffering. You can't even get relief, and it's not the good kind of suffering either. It's not the suffering that grows you. It's just the suffering of being like slowly lowered into a bath full of acid type suffering, which of course is going to immediately provoke me to think about your history So you're a writer. You've got on board with was HighExistence in existence before you, or were you part of the creative team for that?
No, so HighExistence was started around 10 years ago, almost exactly 10 years ago, by a guy called Jordan Lejeune. Jordan Lejeune at the time he's from California, and he was in business school, and he became disenchanted with his course. So he decided to create a blog. 10 years ago, create a blog where he would share some of his favorite ideas and thoughts. And then he quit business school and just wanted to write articles on his blog and share what he learned. Very quickly, he was one of the first people to talk about the sort of psychedelics as a self-improvement tool. And that was 10 years ago. He was one of the first people to be like, I'm entrepreneurial, I love self-improvement, and I experiment with psychedelics. They don't have to be this really taboo, scary, weird thing. If you with strong guidelines and respect. So he started the blog, HighExistence. It started to gain popularity. A community started to grow around it. And round about the same time, a few years after Jordan started this blog, there was a guy called Martijn Scherp, who was a professional poker player from Amsterdam. And Martijn was very good at poker. He entered the World Series for poker and came 9th, I believe. But what he found is the more he played poker, the more depressed he became, because poker trained him to adopt the mindset of a parasite, he said. So even though he was making a lot of money and, living a good life, he was having massages every day, throwing money away, 5-star hotels, winning big. He was training his mind to find weaknesses in other people and exploit them for money. That was his full-time job, hours and hours and hours a day of that. And I mean, that's too much of that. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. You start to enter quite a dark place, and your sense of reality becomes warped. And he remembers that entering the World Series for poker, coming 9th, winning about 60,000, and being extremely depressed because he didn't win 1 million. So he quit poker and went on a Buddhist retreat for 5 weeks, because he was so depressed. And then he started reading blogs online, and he stumbled across HighExistence. He really liked it. He had a bunch of money and he wanted to do something different other than play poker. So he messaged Jordan Lejeune a few years in. Jordan Lejeune had been blogging a few years in, and they became co-owners of HighExistence. So then they both worked together, an ex-professional poker player and Jordan Lejeune, and they created a really unique kind of blog that had a lot of kind of rational skepticism, but also a lot of spirituality, Buddhism, psychedelics, and productivity. It was like a nice mix of things. And then about 5 or 6 years later, Jordan Bates, who's another team member, and myself joined. So we've been working on HighExistence for almost 5 years. And we kind of represented a new chapter of HighExistence. And since then, me and Jordan Bates joined, there was no store, there was no courses. We just focused on articles. But now we've created a flagship course, which is 30 Challenges to Enlightenment, which is what I was explaining, gamified spirituality.
Gamified spirituality, I like that. Yeah, I mean, that's making things like that practical, I think, is the current new challenge that needs to be solved.
Yeah.
So many people get to a philosophical viewpoint and then they can't explain how they got there. So they're off philosophizing and, they're doing the quotable quotes, but everyone's like, yeah, but I'm nowhere near that. Like, how is that, what's that gap between us? And that's why I love HighExistence as well. I've spent a lot of time flicking through the stuff on there. Well, that's, we've got Jordan, I think it is, disenchanted with business, wanted to do something and bring his experience with psychedelics into it. You've got this poker player who discovered money isn't the answer to everything, and pulling people apart to get their money is even worse,
Yeah.
How about yourself? So what's your backstory that ends with joining HighExistence?
So I've always considered myself to be an artist of some kind, a creative person. That's, if I'm not being creative, I'm not happy no matter what I'm doing. So in school, I was always the art guy. I was the guy painting and drawing, writing stories. And when I was from a young age, I always wanted to be a filmmaker. I always saw movies, films as the kind of highest form of art because they combine so many other elements of individual art. It's like mixed martial arts, but in art, right? You got sound, acting, filmography, pictures, script writing. So I always loved films, and film spoke to me a lot. So I went off to do filmmaking in university, a practical course. And I really enjoyed it. But what I found when I was doing my filmmaking degree is that I started to fall in love with the script writing aspect of storytelling. So I started reading a lot of books on how to tell stories, mythology, and that led me down to the path of psychology, because I thought if I'm going to write about good characters, I need to understand how people think. So I started studying psychology, and I just became extremely fascinated, and I became almost obsessed with psychology, because I realized when I first started film school, I went to my first scriptwriting class and I thought I knew everything, and I knew nothing. And then I had a friend who was like, hey, you can read this book that's like 400 pages and learn all of the best tips on how to write a script from one of the best scriptwriting teachers in the world, Robert McKee. And I didn't read books at all at that point, and I was 18 years old. And I thought, okay, so I can read this book in a week and know more than anyone else in my class about script writing. That sounds like it would be worth it. So I did it, and I had so many benefits from doing it that I became like a huge reader. And then like within a few months, I had like many books on storytelling and psychology. And then I found NLP, neuro linguistic programming. I've always been a big fan of Darren Brown. I used to do magic when I was a child, and I like Darren Brown's approach. He's a British psychological illusionist, for those listening, and he's also a skeptic. So he kind of he puts on these kind of illusions and psychological magic sort of displays, but is always grounded in real psychology. So I started studying his work. And round about this time, when I was really deep into studying psychology, I went to the dentist, and I had a tooth that was slightly like out of place, and they gave me the option that I could either have like a wire put behind my teeth, or I could have full braces and then surgery to like realign my bite, because my bite was slightly out. So I said, okay, well, whatever. I'll just have full braces and this surgery you're talking about. They said, okay, fine. It'll take 2 years. So I think it was about 19 at the time. Yeah, about 19. So that 2-year braces and surgery turned into 5 years. So Jesus. From the age of 19, like all the way through to 23, 24, I was waiting and waiting and waiting for these braces to be removed and for me to have this surgery. And it was actually a very difficult period of my life, because, you know, I was in my early 20s. I wanted to go out and drink and have fun, but here I was with braces, and the braces made my bite worse. So even though nobody kind of like said anything, I always felt very insecure about the alignment of my teeth and the fact that I had braces in my 20s. And I became quite self-loathing, I was just insecure and had social anxiety, and I just didn't have many friends. I became quite reclusive, and I just spent all of my time, even more than studying, and going to the gym and just studying and working on myself. And I was living with my parents. I had not much money. I'd applied for a few jobs, but I didn't have much money. Living with my parents, no girlfriend, I just, people around me were like, you have so much potential. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And there I was just like reading and studying. And I think some of my family were like, what is he doing? Where does he think reading these books are going to get him? Like, it's all good and well. You're into self-improvement, but your life is, not very impressive in the least. So the time eventually came when I had my jaw surgery, and 5 years later, and I was terrified. I was terrified of jaw surgery. And one of the things that I did to help me cope with the jaw surgery was start meditating. So that was how I started meditating, to get over the anxiety of this jaw surgery, where they break both my jaws and then realign them. So it was quite intense surgery. And I was going to wake up with a slightly different face permanently. So it was pretty scary. So I started studying Eckhart Tolle and meditation. And then I found Stoicism, books like Man's Search for Meaning. I was actually reading Man's Search for Meaning in the hospital, awaiting the surgery the next day. So this is when I started to get more into Eastern philosophy and Stoicism around this time. And one of the things I did to help me stay motivated and keep my mood up, because even after the surgery, you weren't able to eat solid foods for a month. You were going to be very weak. You were going to be swollen. It was going to be quite an ordeal. One of the things I did is I used my filmmaking skills that I developed in university, and I made a short motivational film, like a 3 or 4 minute motivational film, where I cut together different scenes from different documentaries and added a speaker. And I just released it on YouTube, and the motivational film, it got 10,000 views in 24 hours. So it started to climb, and then 20,000 views, 30,000 views, 40,000 views, and the likes started going up. And I was like, like people like this motivational film that I released. This is cool. And all my friends and family saw it, were like, oh my God, I can't believe how popular this thing is getting. Why don't you create a blog where you release these films? And I didn't know anything about blogging or anything like that. I was like, I know about filmmaking and editing, but I don't know about the world of blogging. So I had my jaw surgery, and a few days after my jaw surgery, I was feeling very weak, very physically depleted, but also excited, because I felt like this was the start of something new. And I felt this urge in me, for some reason, to create a blog. But it wasn't going to be a blog that had anything to do with films. It was going to be a blog where I was going to write articles. I don't know why I had this. It just came a few days after my surgery. And I remember I was reading a Bear Grylls book, and he had a chapter in the book called Get Out of Your Comfort Pit. Because he said comfort zones are much too comfortable sounding. He prefers to use the word comfort pit, because pits are places you want to get out of really quickly. So I was like, okay, comfort pit, I like that. I'm going to go find if that's available. I searched for it. It was available, comfortpit.com. I created that, and I was like, okay, I need to learn how to blog. What can I do? Let's find a blogging book. So I just went on Amazon, found a blogging book, cracked it open. Okay, this is how you set up a domain name. This is how you get hosting. This is how you set up WordPress. So I read it, set it up, created a blog, comfortpit.com, in a few days. And then I was like, okay, what am I going to write about? I don't know. I keep putting off what I'm going to write about. Okay, why don't I write about procrastination? Because I'm procrastinating. That would be the perfect first article. So I wrote an article on procrastination, and I featured some of the work of a guy called Steven Pressfield. He wrote a book called The War of Art, for those listeners. Very, very good book. So I wrote this article, and I released it, and nothing at all. Like no views. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know anything about marketing. No views. I was like, well, I enjoyed writing it, and I'm proud of what I wrote, but no views. Okay, I wonder how I can get views. So I was like, well, why don't I message Steven Pressfield? I featured some of his writing. So I found Steven Pressfield's website, and I sent him a message. And I said, hey, I wrote an article on procrastination featuring some of your words. I thought you might want to check it out. And I just didn't hear anything. And then a few days later, I looked at my dashboard for the stats, for the views of my blog, and it usually like 1 or 2 views a day. And suddenly in the last hour, there was 200. And I was like, oh, wow, this is crazy. So I checked my my inbox, and Stephen Pressfield had replied. He was like, I really liked your article. I've shared it on my Facebook page. So that was motivating, you know, for my first article, got shared. And I just kept writing from there on. I just kept writing. And then I think around my 20th article that I wrote was on meditation. And I put it on Reddit, and it had something like 600 upvotes. People really liked it. And I spent a lot of time on my articles. My approach when writing was always write the best article you can write on this topic so that you never have to write another article on this topic ever again. So I thought, I'm going to write an article why meditation is good, so that I never have to do another article on that again. That will be my article that you can read if you're interested in that. So I put a lot of time into it, added footnotes, added citations, added cool images. And then I released it on Reddit. And a few days later, I get a message from a guy called Martijn from Amsterdam. And he says, hey, I really liked your article. Can we publish it on our blog, HighExistence.com? And I was like, yeah, like, who is this guy? You know, like, this guy called Martijn from Amsterdam. He sounds really nice, but like almost too nice. You know, do people like this even exist? And so, but they do. And we started to talk and become friends. A few months later, he said, look, we've got a position that's open up at HighExistence. It's the position of an editor. We want someone to come and be an editor for the blog. The pay isn't that high, but it's a really good opportunity for you. So I was still just living with my parents, didn't have much opportunities or money. And I said, yeah, let's do it. So I worked really hard for 6 months on HighExistence. And then Jordan Lejeune and Martijn made me give me a piece of the company and made me a co-owner of HighExistence then, along with Jordan Bates, which is very rare. It's a very rare thing to do, like as someone who's just joined a company. But that is the type of people that Martijn and Jordan are. You know, they wanted to reward me and Jordan Bates for our work and show like that we are a team. So yeah, about a year after that, I found myself in Amsterdam, living in Amsterdam for about 6 months, hanging out with Martijn, and I'm working on HighExistence in real life. So that's the journey so far.
God, that's such a cool story, dude. That is, what I love about that is the step-by-step of it, where, well, 2 aspects to it. One is you go for one thing that you like, and that puts you onto another thing that you like. So you ditch the first thing, you go to the second thing, and that puts you on the third thing, so you ditch the second thing. You know, that kind of step-by-step process. I get so many fucking people asking, like, you know, what's my purpose or whatever. I'm like, forget it. Just do what you like and then follow your nose. You know, you'll find it. It'll find you, whatever. And you are just the perfect example of what I'm trying to tell them. It's like, I think I want to do filmmaking, so I go to filmmaking. I've got to read this book, or now I like reading, so I'll go reading. And you just follow your nose. And I'm sure that's just natural and normal for you. But for some people, they're just stuck at step 1, which they didn't even want to do in the first place. So they didn't even like follow a single piece of desire, not even like a little hint at something. And they're wondering why they can't figure out what to do with their lives, you know? And the other thing I love about it, you know, your jaw surgery story, there are some people when 2 years became 5, that would have been like a game over moment for them. Like, how unfair is life, you know, poor me. And I'm not saying you didn't suffer, because it sounds like you did. And I definitely want to hear a bit more about your social world and your social backstory, because you and I have some shared sort of grievances in our past, I guess. But it's that very, very classic, almost cliched turning crisis to opportunity thing. A lot of people see that kind of stuff quoted around and little memes and that. But you just gave an example of what that actually means. You know, you're banged up in hospital, you're all fucked up, or you've got a long recovery ahead of you. There's no way around this. Everything's going to suck for a while. And so you're like, okay, I'll make some videos and I'll write some stuff. Like, I've still got hands and eyes. Like, you went straight to what's still available and what can be done. Whereas so many people would have been lying in that hospital bed, scrolling on Facebook and dark about not being able to eat solids. Your focus is incredible. Your perspective for it's like how an explosion goes down the path of least resistance sort of thing. You're like, well, what can I do? It seems like that's been a theme for you. Like, what can I do, or what do I want to do that I can do?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're lucky, like if you're just kind of like born with it, or is that something you had to develop, or what?
I'm not 100% sure. As I said, like I've always been artistic and kind of always like enjoyed viewing the world from different perspectives than the norm, questioning things. But I think that if I was, now that I'm a bit older and I tend to I tend to think like, what do I have that's like my gift, what kind of personality trait do I have that helps me in life that maybe other people don't have mine, but they have their own. And I think one of my gifts is that doing things that I know other people won't do in the same situation as me kind of excites me, that kind of like motivates me, because it's like, it's kind of like that. Who would do this now? No one, but I will. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take action on this. And you hear all the time, like when people get like, someone recommends a book to you, hey, you should definitely read this book, and you get the same book recommendation like 4 times, and you go, yeah, I'll read it, and you don't. It's like, read it, just do it, get it now, read it, start reading it. That kind of attitude of like doing the things that that are difficult, that require a lot of patience, that require a lot of boredom, that all those kind of like unfun emotions. I have this like meta level enjoyment of doing those things. So yeah, I don't know why that is necessarily. I think that I'm gifted with a lot of patience. That's one of them. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I cultivated patience because of waiting so many years for my jaw surgery, just like cultivating patience. And the other thing as well that I think that has been lucky for me is you see some people, they read a lot of books and they have this notebook knowledge where they can like quote all these people to you, but then it's like, what do you think? What are your ideas? And they don't have anything to show. And I've always thought of it like this: like every human being is unique in every way. Everyone is super unique. Life experiences, biology. So you and I could read the same book, exactly the same book. We could read the same 50 books at the same time, but we're not reading the same books at all. We're not reading the same book, not in the least, because the filter is completely different. So I've always like thought of study and like my life like that, like I can, whatever I do is unique to me, and that's exciting. So I've always just tried to filter my life experience and kind of go, well, nobody else is having this experience that I'm having because nobody else is me. What can I make from this based on my own unique craziness?
I think you and I have so much in common. And it's funny because I get to see a different version of it. It's the same principles, but a completely different life, born to a different culture, born into different genetics. And it's sort of like the chaos effect, it just maps out completely differently on the same principle. But, my book, Nothing to Lose, is all about the value of curiosity. And what you're describing is what I was trying to say, which is, yeah, your example is so good. I'm the person, if someone says, read this book, within 3 days I've read it. Whereas everyone else is like, yeah, I'll read it, and they never do. And because they just, like, that's the common response. Or, like you, there's that rebellion streak. Like, if I know other people stay away from something, that alone compels me to do it. And I just feel very validated in a sense listening to you. I'm like, so you can work with other people too, they just in their own way. We just, I consider it luck. I don't know. I've been curious since I was born in that way that you describe. and I absolutely put that down to genetics. But your wait for your surgery was my 4 years of no sex. Now, yours was almost certainly more physically painful. I imagine it would have been. But the enforced patience, where you learned to, for me, it was okay, I just can't have this thing no matter how hard I try. What can I do? And that's really, I think, what patience is. Patience isn't like a lot of people think of sitting still in a queue
Mm.
as patience. But I think patience is more like knowing when to let go of something you can't control and wait for it to do its thing while you do something else, rather than trying to force feed reality, your version of what should be happening. So very incredible to hear you talk, man. I'm just in this talk, I'm getting a much clearer picture as to why I click with you so easily.
Mm.
Though we've talked before, and I thought it was more of a sort of a shared, similar external history, especially with women and that whole thing. But actually, I realize it's much more about a shared philosophical perspective. I was also like once I discovered psychology, absolutely obsessed and just
Mm.
digested as many pieces of information as possible. But also, like you, I was more like, how do I use this rather than I can't remember the citation, but I took the gist of it and applied it to my life. I'm more that type than the guy who can say in 1984, Simons et al. Quoted the Bible. I can't do that. Um, yeah, I've been hanging out to talk about your social history, you know,
Yeah.
because that's just such a shared thing for us. So there you are, you've got this underbite, overbite thing, whatever it is, and the
Underbite. Yeah.
insecurities coming in socially, you know. Take us from there in terms of your social world and what it was like to be you socially.
So I'll go back a little bit just to give you some sort of context for the
Yeah.
context. So um, I I have great family, great parents. Never really wanted anything. I can't say that I've had a super traumatic childhood or anything like that. It's been really nice. Um, was never really like the most popular person, but never really the least popular person. I've had periods of maybe feeling like a bit of a loner just because of my personality type. I'm quite introverted and I like to do my own like thing. Um, but in high school, I remember I I was definitely quite shy around women. So if you go back to when I was about like really young, like I was very kind of like happy, jokey. And then when I went to high school, the big school, I was a bit more like, oh, look at all these alpha males, like from other schools, like the rugby players, and the girls are so much more bitchy. And then I kind of retreated more into myself.
Mm.
Then when I was about 15, I started boxing. I started doing boxing, and that I gained confidence, lost weight. And then I had my first girlfriend when I was 16. That lasted for 2 years. I worked in a clothing store with like 50 other women and two guys. So I had a lot of experience talking to women, and we're very good friends. And I have a sister, and I'm very close to my mother. And then when I went to university, I got into another relationship for 2 years. So um, that was all fine, kind of like a normal, healthy, kind of relationship life for my age. But when I had my braces, a few months after my braces, I broke up with my girlfriend from university, and that was a difficult period because other stuff was going on around the breakup. Like the braces were maybe getting me down. University became difficult. I wasn't getting along so much with some of the bigger personalities in the groups that we had to work with. And it's actually very difficult being a creative person who has to work in a team with people with egos, because you want to get across this idea and someone can just shut you down with dominance, and you have to kind of figure out, how can I get this idea into reality? when there's someone with a worse idea who's just more dominant than I am, or more outspoken. There's a quote by Oscar Wilde that I love, and he says something like, I can stand brute force, but I can't stand brute reason. That is hitting below the intellect. And you do meet people sometimes, they use brute reason with you, it's like a shutting down. It's not actual reason. It's like, no, it's a closing down, you must be quiet. My idea is better than yours. So I broke up with my girlfriend in uni, and then I had my braces. And similar to you, I went years, maybe it could be 4 years of just no female like intimacy or love. And it was painful, it was, you hear other guys talking about sex and relationships, and then they might ask you, like, who are you seeing? And you're like, oh, like, I can't possibly speak the truth of my situation. I feel so embarrassed. I'm in my early 20s. Oh my God. So out of this frustration, out of this kind of like insecure, needing control state of mind, I found a book called The Game. It's a pickup artist book by Neil Strauss, and I read the book, and I thought it was an amazing book. And I told my friend, hey, like, there's this book, The Game. You can go out and you can get better at socializing. Like, it's actually this thing, you can go out and talk to like loads of people and improve it, you don't have to be like stuck. And I've always been lucky to have the friends that I have had have always been great friends. So most people, when they hear, read the book, The Game, as we were saying, they're like, I'm good, dude. I've got enough, I can get girls, I can get girls. I don't have that problem. But my friend was like, okay, sounds good. Let's go out. Let's do it. So we started going to bars and clubs when I had braces. Very difficult. I was like, in my mind, I was like, it's just an insecurity. You've got to get past it. You've got to get past it. But I couldn't get past it. I was so scared. I was so anxious. I was terrified. And then eventually I might pluck up the courage to go and talk to someone, talk to a stranger. And I'd be like shaking. I'd be nervous. And a lot of the time we just went out and we just talked to each other, me and my friend, and we didn't really socialize with other people. We had some good fun, we tried to always like be in a good mood and have some good laughs and things. But in a way, this kind of confrontation with my inability to push out of my comfort zone made me feel worse, and that's one of the issues with this kind of like the picking up kind of industry, is that it's like, it's really difficult, it's really difficult, and depends where you're at, but it's very difficult to go out and, if you're socially anxious, and just go and talk to strangers, and if you don't have really good coaching, or like someone to like help you all the way through, you can just spin the wheels and just feel even worse because you're not doing anything. It's and we can talk about the value of coaching in general in this sense as well. But just going out into the world on your own and just talking to strangers is very difficult to improve your social skills if you have social anxiety. But anyway, we kept going out, and I remember even going out in London once, and I started speaking to a girl, and it was going well, and she was laughing, and then I smiled, and she looked at my braces, and she kind of like pointed like this at my braces, and I just crumbled. Like my whole like self-image, my self-esteem was just like, ugh. My confidence, the kind of big, a cool guy persona that I was putting on, at the time, just kind of broke instantly because there was no real solid confidence underneath. And I was like, I'm done for tonight. I'm good. And I just didn't want to go out anymore. I just felt like I couldn't. It was just too painful. But I learned a lot, though. I learned a lot about my own mind. I learned how my own mind made excuses. I learned how my own mind dealt with anxiety and fear. And I learned a lot in this period about myself. It was a lot of like know thyself kind of practice, because when you go out into like bars and clubs, difficult situations, and you have social anxiety, it's confronting, and you get to see how the workings of your own mind go through. And then you wake up the next day fresh in bed, and you think back to the night before, and you think, why was I acting like that? Why was I afraid? There's nothing to be afraid of. But every time you go there, the fear kicks in again. So I stopped going out, and I went even deeper into my studies and work and writing. And I was actually happy doing that. I don't think that you need, like, a lot of the things you think you need, you don't. If you can find something you love, like a passion, and you spend a lot of time working on it, I don't think that you necessarily need, and not everyone, at least some people do, but you don't always need sex or a girlfriend. It depends on where you are in life, and what your values are at that particular time. So I put all of my focus in work, and then I continued to work with HighExistence. This was like, I was working with HighExistence now for about 8 months. And I thought to myself, I have this great opportunity now to travel. I still have social anxiety. I still don't have I still don't have a girlfriend. I don't have, I wasn't pining for a girlfriend or anything, but I don't have a girlfriend. I don't have that many friends. I'm working and going to the gym and reading, and I'm hanging out with the few friends I have. Why don't I go travel alone? Why don't I really get out my comfort zone? So I decided that I was going to go to Thailand on my own for 6 weeks. So that was really when the real growth started to happen. It was when I went to Thailand on my own, and I was totally not prepared for the experience. Getting there on my own, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. This is scary. This is hot. I don't know where to go. And what happened when I got to Thailand was I started to feel lonely, actually, for the first time in a while after 3 days there, because I didn't know anyone there, and I was literally thousands of miles from all of my family and friends, and I didn't have any data on my phone, so I couldn't constantly text and call my family. So I thought, why don't I check Tinder out? Why don't I go on Tinder? Never used it before. Why don't I just go on Tinder, see if I can kind of get out there, meet someone? So I went onto Tinder, swiping, lots of lady boys on there, and like there was just nothing really that kind of connected with me. And then eventually, after looking through like a bunch of profiles, I found there was a girl who did graphic design, and seemed very interesting. So I thought, oh, I don't know, like I'll send a message, and I sent a message, and I said, should we meet up and go for a drink? There's a bar around the corner, this rooftop bar that looks cool. And she said, yeah. And when she said, yeah, you'd think that I would be happy, but I wasn't happy. I was scared. I was like, I kind of hoped that she would say no. Like, there was a part of me that didn't want this to happen. And that's the other interesting thing about the mind, is that you have these success barriers. It's like, a lot of people don't actually want success. They don't actually want to live an epic life, because it's hard. It requires you to get out there and face your fears. So she said, yeah, okay, let's meet at 8. And I was like, oh my God, okay, this is actually happening. And I started to get nervous, and I was just hoping she'd cancel. And I was like, I hope she just says to me like, oh, she can't tonight, next week or something. But she didn't cancel. So it was like 5 minutes before the time of the date, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. And I thought to myself, I was crazy nervous at the time. Like, it's kind of funny to think how nervous I was, like now when I look back, but it was very nervous. Like, it was my first ever date with someone I'd never even met. And it was in Thailand with a Thai girl who seemed very interesting. So I thought to myself, how am I going to do this? How am I going to face my fears and go to this date location? And I said to myself, whatever happens, it will make an interesting story. Whatever happens, it will make an interesting story. Whatever happens, I can tell my friends it's a funny story. Like, whatever happens, even if the worst case scenario, like a stoic perspective, even if everything goes wrong, that will make a really funny story of everything going wrong. So I went to have this date, met up with her, and and we just talked for like 2-3 hours, and it was just great. We had great conversation, and I was like, thought she was really cool. And for about 3 weeks after that, she took me around on a scooter to different locations in Thailand. And there I was 3 weeks later in Thailand, going to different markets and different restaurants with an amazing, interesting girl. And like 3-4 weeks earlier, I was lonely, like living like my work life was really good, but my kind of life situation was kind of like you could look in and go, oh, he's kind of a loser, you know, like you could make that impression, even though I didn't feel that way inside. And yeah, and that just came from really, I had to really just go into these areas that were scary for me, and I had to get out of my comfort zone. So that might be quite a long answer, but that's kind of my social history there. And that's when I started then to gain more confidence from that point on.
Again, a ton of similarities, you know. My first big move was to do Camp America, just go to the United States as a camp counselor, and wasn't on my own exactly, but sort of was. Like a friend ended up doing the same camp as me, but yeah, it was the beginning of something. I got my first girlfriend there since my last however many years ago and so on. So interesting that we have that shared history, but yeah, isn't it? It's incredible how, like, one little thing, like, it's interesting you say about teeth, because I just forgot, actually, in high school, I used to have warts all over my hands. Just one of those unlucky kids that just got this big blowout, you know, I look like a fucking orc. And, you know, and they lasted a few years. It wasn't long, but it was enough, and it was at just the worst time from like 13 to 16. Just the worst time to have like untouchable hands, you know? And I remember, I just distinctly remember I used to sit in this way where I'd crumple my hands into these weird shapes that covered each wart, you know? So like if you look at my hand, it would look like I had some sort of palsy, but I was actually just like covering every single thing. And I think back to that, I'm like, Jesus, no wonder I was struggling, you know? Like I couldn't even show my hands to people, like the mentality behind that.
Yeah.
You know? And like you, I just have one person go, oh, a little comment, just noticing, and I just fall to pieces. You know, the house of cards comes down.
Yeah.
So I definitely relate to that experience. And what I love is, again, what we talked about, that like relentless curiosity, where you just can't sit still in that comfort pit, as you call it, for very long. You just can't. And it takes you to Thailand. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. And you just let, you know, I'm not a super spiritual guy, but sometimes you just do your bit and then like let the universe do its bit, and you kind of work with it. You know, you could have backed out of that date. You did everything you could by showing up. And it's amazing how that one experience, you know, like one person can totally rescue, you know, the situation. I've had that myself, you know, I make one friend somewhere. Had that recently with Krav Maga, for example. Go there, nobody speaks English. Totally intimidating situation. And then one guy who speaks English kind of likes me. I'm just like, oh, I like this class now. Just totally turns the whole thing around. But you had to get there to have that experience.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's I hope when people listen, they're hearing the theme even more than they're hearing the details. You know, that kind of, I sometimes think about it, you know, when you got a fly in your house and it's trying to get out the window, got some massive glass pane and a little sliver of window, it's just banging against the glass until it gets the gap, you know. It can be really frustrating to watch. You know, but you and me, that's what we do, you know. We hit the glass, we just bang away, trying every different spot until something goes through. Because just sitting still on the, you know, on the glass and waiting to die just isn't really an option. And what, yeah, I did some research when I first started coaching. It was just on the concept of success. I wanted to know, like, those people are at the very top of their game. I've always wanted to know what's the real story behind the scenes, these so-called overnight successes. And when I was doing that, I came across Psy, you know, Gangnam Style.
Yeah.
That guy. And, this guy just took over the entire internet and owned YouTube just out of nowhere. The song didn't even have English in it. I was just like, this Korean dude just came out of nowhere. And I went on Wikipedia and I found out that before Gangnam Style was like 14 failed albums, one of which was so controversial in Korea, he went to prison for it.
Wow.
I'm like, that's the truth. That's what nobody knows. He didn't just suddenly appear on YouTube. He was banging away at that window, just trying to do what he loved, paying a high price, and obviously experiencing all sorts of horrifically painful emotional moments. And that's what I think of when I think of you, like as a fellow blogger, I look at HighExistence. I'm like, fuck, that's something to aim for. Like, they know what they're doing.
Mm.
And I love hearing that backstory. Like, well, actually, first I tried to be a script writer, and then I had this problem with my jaw, so I had to read a lot. And that's what leads up to HighExistence.
Yeah.
It's not just some blog that pops up out of nowhere. It's a team of guys who are working on themselves for a whole lifetime before that.
Yeah.
That's what's so cool. And that's why, you read HighExistence compared to, say the kind of blogs where you read them, someone's written them to try and create a successful blog. They haven't written them to get a message out. They haven't written them to try and improve the world or to express themselves. They're solely going straight to some sort of outcome. They see blog as a vehicle. You read those ones and it's shallow and empty and meaningless, and it's all just sort of not even just clickbait, but it's just engineered writing and videos trying to get as many stats as possible. When I read your stuff and check out HighExistence, I see is the work of people who would do it even if no one was watching.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Martin, who I've mentioned, the ex-poker player, he was a great mentor for me, and this is the type of sort of senior figure that he was in the company. I remember we use a Slack, it's like a messaging system for communications. And I was telling him, I haven't been meditating much lately because, when I wake up in the morning, there's so many things to do with HighExistence, with work, that I just want to get straight to it. And he said to me, don't worry about that. Always meditate first, no matter what needs to be done. It can wait. And that little story kind of exemplifies the attitude that we have. We are all kind of walking. We try our best to walk the talk, and we're not sitting in some ivory tower oh, this is a cool spiritual thing that I read and I'll never apply. Go check it out. And that's why the retreats have been really fun, because people get a chance to come and hang out with the HighExistence team, and you see that we are just like you. We're just people who love bettering ourselves, questioning things, being curious. And yeah, you can just hang out with us and we can just sort of learn from each other. And we're just real people that are on this journey.
Well, I think that comes through the work, definitely. I read a lot of this kind of stuff, and I can go one paragraph and I know the difference. It's as soon as I read it, I'm like, okay, this is just like SEO just crushing my brain. And other times I read something, I'm like, okay, this is a dude speaking from his real life, does something he's passionate about. He wants people to be supported. It's not that you don't have business savvy, of course you do, but it's, the work first, as you say. I love the idea of meditation first. I mean, if you're running a blog about meditation, you skip meditation to write it. What are you doing? You miss the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that, man. And we'll wrap it up here. We can always talk more. I think you and I will have many conversations.
Endless conversations we could have.
Live long enough, yeah. And but I love there's just a solid theme coming through, which is you're curious, you're persistent, you chose things that you are scared of rather than dwelling in that comfort pit. And not in some cliched way. You were really put to the test. You had plenty of opportunities to opt out. And I'm sure if we scanned in on details, there would have been tough days and weeks and maybe even months where you did, as we all do. But you just didn't stay there. That's the key. You just went on to the next thing. You never clung to any one thing too tightly.
No.
You just found if you found something better, then you just quickly went for the better thing. You didn't have
Always. Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Always.
It's like I said, it's natural for you. There are a lot of people it's not. It's really the opposite. That is unnatural for them. They commit to something and they can't let it go, even though it's always stuck.
One final thing that I just want to mention for people listening, which I found really useful, is one of the kind of personality kind of traits that I find that I have, and I find that a lot of really wise, successful people also have it, is whenever I'm very passionate. So whenever I get into something, say I get into a particular thinker or author or philosophy or whatever, and I love it. I soak everything up. I learn as much as I can from it. But then it doesn't take me long before I ask myself the question, what are the flaws in this way of life, in this person? Not in like a really critical way, like not in a like insulting way, but like take someone like Tony Robbins. Like I've read Tony Robbins' work, I've listened to Personal Power, I've soaked all that in and loved it. And then I ask myself, well, what is Tony missing? What are the pieces that he's missing in? And then like, maybe I can go a step further than Tony and find those areas that he's missing. And then I ask, what is this person missing? So I'm always looking at gaps in my own understanding and other people's understanding. And that quote, like, kill the Buddha when you see him. Like, whoever you idolize, learn as much as you can, but don't be afraid to let it go for something else.
Another thing we've got in common, I do intense period of worship, and then my skepticism comes back. But I don't abandon the person either. I keep what they gave me, and then see the fallacies that everybody has in them, and look for somebody whose strength is that weakness. It's exactly what I do. And I mean, that's the same. We both read the game. We go, "This is amazing," and then the flaws become apparent. So we go, "Well, what else is there?" Honesty gets discovered, and so on. And then there's some things you find which, tested to death, always come through, like values. Curiosity. Curiosity has never let me down. It's not a person I worship. It's not a strategy. It's not a school of thought. It's just a way of living that can be applied to anything. And same with honesty. Honesty hasn't let me down. It's made me pay the price for dishonesty. But it was dishonesty that let me down. It was just potential energy stored that honesty released. So I'm like the same. I was just thinking recently, I went through my Jordan Peterson phase, and then the more I explored, like especially when I saw him debate against Sam Harris, I was like, okay, he's not perfect actually, but there's some stuff he does really fucking well, or like just kind of validate some theories I had. And there's other stuff I'm just gonna let him play with that on his own because that ain't right.
Yeah.
Excellent, man. To finish up, where somebody's more interested, I mean, obviously HighExistence.com, but specifically, where do you want people to go next?
Yeah, I would just say like check out HighExistence.com. You can just search for a particular topic that you find interesting, but also I would actually direct people from here to the podcast that you and I recorded. So that's the High Existence podcast, and me and Dan recorded a podcast on honesty where I interviewed you, and I think that is the perfect place for your listeners to go to for more information. It's like it's about an hour and a half long, almost 2 hours. Really good stuff.
Yeah, that was a good chat. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And, I look forward to having another one. Well, thank you so much, dude, for joining me. And I know it was probably relatively easy for you, but opening up and sharing and, revealing both the light and the dark, people can't understand the work they really have to put in.
Yeah.
Until they see someone like yourself, happy father, accomplished blog, taking good care of yourself, high confidence. You earn that one piece of effort at a time over an extended period of time. That wasn't handed to you in any way. In fact, there was the opposite handed to you on numerous occasions. And I want people to hear that, so when they're going, my life sucks, And you go, yeah, maybe it does, but this is the start of the story, not the end.
Mm.
And I would absolutely 100% without reservation recommend somebody just follow your way of doing things, at
Mm.
least to get them going.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Alrighty, dude. Let's
Yeah.
wrap it up there.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I think you're doing amazing work. I always love talking to you, and looking forward to the next time we can do it. So,
Cheers.
yeah.
Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to check out HighExistence.com to listen to Jon's podcast and to check out his awesome articles. And of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel and send your comments through and share this around if you liked it. Help support the cause. And I'll see you all next time. Thank you.